So we're in this series, we've been taking the year just to study the Bible as a whole, looking at it as this piece of literature which has transformed the world, more read, more published by far than any other book. It's shaped cultures, it's established values, governments have based themselves upon it. And at this period of time, we're looking at different symbols. So significant symbols throughout Christianity. Last week we looked at this combination of the blood and the wine and what that signifies. And here's what I'd like to do this week. I want to look at the cross, the cross as a symbol. It's essential. It's right here to my left, your right, up on the wall. Some of you have one on your neck right now. Some of you have one dangling from the rear view mirror of your car. So the cross, it's everywhere. Why is that such a symbol? And ultimately would be this question: what are we supposed to see, experience, think when we see the cross? What's it a symbol of? So interestingly, the cross was not the first symbol of the Christian church. Okay, ready? We're gonna do a tiny bit of history that includes the back of American cars. You ready for this? So there's two symbols that preceded the cross. And the first one would be, you got it, right? It's a fish. Now, why in the world would the fish be a symbol for the early followers of Jesus? Because it just seems a little different. Well, it's right here, right? And so now you'll see these on many people's cars, and sometimes Darwin's swallowing it or it's swallowing Darwin. We've just gone along with this for a long time. And so here's how this became one of the early symbols of the church. When it was dangerous to be a follower of Jesus, initially, mainly you feared the Jewish establishment more than you feared the Roman government. If you were on a journey, you came face to face with somebody and you're talking to them, one of the ways it appears that they would test whether or not you guys were on the same team is you'd either take your foot or you'd take your staff and you draw just the first half of this arc. And if the person you were talking to reached down and finished the symbol of the fish, then you'd be like, okay, we're on the same team. We can talk very plainly about what we believe. So it was kind of this litmus test because you didn't know who you were talking to. You didn't know how they would respond. So here's the Greek word for fish. It's ichthus. Ichthus. If we use this today, Latin and Greek terms, if you work for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and you're in the fisheries department, you studied to become an ichthyologist, right? So it's the study of fish and its environments. So why fish? Well, probably because Jesus had a couple of really significant miracles that had to do with reproducing fish to feed crowds and bread, but it wasn't a loaf of bread as the early symbol. Here's why. This is how you would spell fish. This is the Greek letters right here. So you put this, and then oftentimes you'll see these same letters inside of the fish. So this is ichthus. So here are the letters. The first letter is the iota, Isus, which was Jesus. So what they did is they made an acrostic. Oh my goodness, the word fish in Greek, if we took each of these letters and gave it a different word that it represented, this could say, it would make a statement. So it's the iota, the chi, the theta, the epsilon, the sigma, and these are the first letters for each of these words. Jesus, the anointed one, Christ, God, the Son, Savior. And so when you saw the word ichthus, you weren't thinking, oh, fish, but instead you were thinking, oh, these letters in ichthus now mean to us this powerful statement that Jesus was the one the world had been waiting for. He's the anointed one, the Christ. And he's not just a man who lives some spectacular life. You're making this bold statement that he was actually God's son, and his ultimate goal is salvation. He came to save humanity. So this fish, it would also point the direction. So you would put this fish on the side of a building. We have a lot of archaeological evidence of this. And it would point wherever the nose of the fish was pointing. That kind of led you to where this house church was. Just keep following the fish, right? Okay, go left here. There's a fish pointing that way. And so you could find a place where a group of believers lived or had been congregated. So that was one of the major symbols of the early church. And here's the other one, which is fairly unknown to us. And none of you have this on the back of your car, I promise. So it's, I can't talk and draw at the same time, sorry. It's 8 pieces. To us, looks like, oh, a pizza, right? Or a wheel. And so for a lot of years, we did not know what this meant. There are, I think, around 12 or 13 of them discovered just in the city of Ephesus. And so everybody thought, man, this in some way this is associated with the early church, but nobody was exactly sure how. And then, about 30 years ago, we're like, oh, we actually found one where it's laid out. So it's going to be the same letters, the ichthus, right? Signifying Jesus is the Christ, he's God's son, and he's the Savior. But they just did this wheel, and look how each one of these letters fits in here. So this is there's the iota, here's the chi, the 2 X's, right? Here's the theta, you go around, line through the middle, here's the epsilon, and then here is the sigma. Put that on the back of your car. Nobody will know what you're saying, right? So it just works that all these letters end up being in here. And so another covert way, this is more during the Roman Empire, where it would become maybe really, really dangerous to be a follower of Jesus. And so they just draw this wheel, and that was a sign of, hey, we're followers of Jesus, and we're going to proclaim it, but we're not necessarily going to proclaim it to the Romans. We're going to proclaim it to all the other believers, and this is a safe house for you. So these were all over the Roman Empire. We find more and more of them now that we know what we're looking for. But both of these eventually kind of fade out, don't they? We've resurrected the ichthus fish. In the end, this incredibly simple symbol came to signify the followers of Jesus, the cross. However, this doesn't happen until the mid-4th century. After Constantine converts to Christianity, it's not long after that crucifixion is outlawed in the Roman Empire. And it's only after crucifixion is outlawed in the Roman Empire that people begin to signify the cross with Christianity. The cross was ultimately important. You'll read that throughout the New Testament. But I just want you to think of the implications. Crucifixion was such a horrific event. So the Roman government used it for at least 800 years to control this incredibly vast empire. They had seen it used by the Babylonians in ancient times. There's probably never been a more brutal way of killing someone. It was horrific, and Rome would kill people. When they put people on a cross, it was always in a public place. It was along highways. It was meant to just inspire ultimate fear, so that if you were in the empire and you were thinking about revolt, you were thinking about breaking the law, you saw someone being crucified, and it was so horrific that you would say, I'm not going to do that, because I don't want to end up there. There's no worse place for a human being to be. So for the first 300-400 years, like Christians didn't wear crosses and they didn't use it because it was just this brutal instrument of torture. So it'd be if Jesus came in 2022, capital punishment today is what? An electric chair or lethal injection. Like it'd just be like bad taste if you wore like a little model of an electric chair around your neck. You'd be like, oh no, that's just too fresh. Like that means other things. But once crucifixion is outlawed, then the Christians begin to use this symbol. And you'll see them in churches. You'll see them absolutely everywhere. So what is the cross? And what are we supposed to say or feel or experience? I have a friend who taught me this question. I've been asking this question for, I don't know, at least 20 years. Just to people, especially if I'm in an airport or something and you sit next to somebody and you see them talking. If I notice they're wearing a cross, I ask this question. I go, I love your cross. I say, are you wearing that for decoration or declaration? And every time people go like, what? Oh, I was just curious about your cross. Are you wearing that for a decoration or a declaration that you're saying something? And most of the time people go, well, I just like it, and maybe there's a history. This was my grandma's or my grandfather's. I'm like, oh, beautiful. And then they'll almost always ask me like, what does the declaration part mean? And I just start asking questions. Well, sometimes people wear crosses because they're trying to make a statement. They're trying to say this, that Jesus Christ is God's son and he is the Savior. So that means you're declaring something. And like, it always leads to this great conversation. Oh. So the cross, as it emerges, like during medieval times, it's always depicted eventually, it becomes not a cross, but the crucifixion. And when you say a crucifix, that means that there is a Jesus still on the cross. The reformers, Luther and Zwingli in particular, became very convinced that this was a form of idolatry. That when you looked at the cross with a Jesus on it, one, it only told half the story, right? And two, they were terribly afraid that people began to worship the cross rather than what's behind the cross, rather than what the cross signifies. So the reformers took that emaciated Savior off the cross and said, let's have a cross, but make sure we never worship the cross. We worship what happened on the cross. All right, so there's a little history on the cross and the early Christian symbols. Now, this would be one of the few times where a couple weeks ago I had like an outline laid out where I've been doing research on when we talk about the cross. And it was one of those few times where I just said, I got to put all that aside. It was pretty much done. And I felt like I needed to talk about the cross as a symbol right from Jesus's perspective. And in John chapter 3, which we'll get to in a few moments, Jesus is going to reference the cross in a conversation with a man named Nicodemus. And in this conversation, he's going to refer back to a really unique Old Testament narrative from Numbers 21, where we have this introduction of a cross-like thing. And Jesus is going to link what he's going to do in the cross with this Numbers 21 passage, okay? Are you ready? So, I just gotta warn you, this has been one of those passages where you read it and you kind of scratch your head like, what? Here's point number 1, bronze snakes. Okay, bronze snakes. Kind of sounds like an 80s heavy metal band or a bad movie, doesn't it? Bronze snakes. So here's the setting for Numbers 21. The people of Israel, 39 years before, had left Egypt. They've been slaves. They're about ready to go to the promised land, but this same cycle keeps happening. They just don't trust God. You can take them out of Egypt, but it's gonna take a lot longer to get the Egypt out of them. If for 400 years you were told you are subhuman, your God is silent, the Egyptian gods are the superior gods, it had just broken them down. So God takes 40 years to build character and trust in their lives. So they've been on a camping trip with God for over 39 years at this point. Long camping trip, right? It's a really long camping trip. And they're about ready to enter the promised land. This is what we read in Numbers 21 after 39 plus years of wandering. They traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea to go around Edom. But the people grew impatient on the way. I think we can all understand their impatience. Okay, we were here 40 years ago and now we're back. Let's just go. And God's like, not yet. They spoke against God. So that's quite the indictment. They're making these complaints that I really don't think God cares for us. I don't think God's with us. We'll never get there. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? So even after 39 years of God supporting and caring for them, they're still afraid God's gonna let us go. We're not gonna make it. There is no bread. and there's no water. And we detest this miserable food. Now, some of you know the miserable food is manna. And manna, you translate it from Hebrew. The Hebrew word is manna, which literally means, what is it? It's a question. And so they're starving out in the desert 39 years before, and they make this same claim. And so God, supernaturally overnight, like this food ends up on the ground like dew. And when they get up that first morning, they go, manna, what is that, right? And God says, that's the food you're going to eat for the next 40 years, for breakfast and lunch and dinner. So you can kind of understand that they've learned to detest the manna, right? It's like, we're done. We're just done. This is not like a foodie culture. We eat the same thing 3 times a day for 39 years. Then the Lord sent venomous snakes. Ooh, don't we wish this said something different? Then the devil sent venomous snakes. But look at this. The Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, we sinned when we spoke out against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us. That prayer seems to make a lot of sense, right? God, would you please you sent them, would you take them away? So Moses made a bronze snake. He doesn't pray for the snakes to go away. He made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole, a long stick. And then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived. Fascinating. So there's a couple of things that are just really interesting about this account. It's the year 2493 BC. And this is the 4th in a cycle in the book of Numbers where the people begin to complain and whine and they doubt God's goodness, and God brings some form of judgment. They feel a bit of pain and they go like, we're so sorry, God, now we're gonna trust you. And that happens 3 more times in the book of Numbers. This is the final time. God doesn't take away the snakes. Instead, there's just this moment where Moses creates a bronze snake, and that takes a while, right? So these snakes have time to keep biting people. And then he holds the bronze snake up, and anyone who looks at the snake is healed. Now, I don't know about you, but if there were venomous snakes slithering around camp, where would you be looking? Like, where's the next one? Like, oh no, right? You just be looking. Or if you were just bit, you're looking like, oh no, like it's swelling. You're like, somebody do something. And it's just fascinating. The way to be healed is what? You have to look away from the thing that's caused you pain. You have to look away from the thing that is killing you, and you have to look to the same thing. A bronze snake up on a pole, and the only antidote for the venom that is coursing through your system, it's on, the word venom in Hebrew actually means fire, is that you are on fire and it's moving towards your organs and you know you're gonna die, and the only solution is to look at a different snake. One that's up on a pole. Psychologists call this something like exposure therapy. So if you're terrified of something, the idea, you have a psychosis of maybe a neurosis of I'm scared of clowns, okay? I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand, but if you're scared of clowns, in exposure therapy, they do this, like, okay, we sat together for 3 weeks and you learned to trust me, and then I'm gonna take a picture of a clown and I'm just gonna put it in front of you and you're gonna be, but then you're gonna look, your therapist is gonna look at you and go like, you saw the clown and you're okay. It's true, I'm still alive, I saw the clown, I'm still alive. The next week, show you 2 clowns. Oh, okay. All right. I saw. So the idea is if you can look at the thing that brings you the greatest fear and you can begin to face it, over a period of time, enough exposure will calm that neuroses within you. Like you'll learn to come to this place of like, okay, like I could go to a circus now. I'm ready. I can do this. So is that what's going on here, or is there something more? Okay, so you look at the thing that is causing you pain. Well, let's jump forward to the book of John, chapter 3, where Jesus is going to talk about the cross with Nicodemus, and he's going to go back to this story. So point number 2 is this, is Jesus and the cross, and he ties these two things together, the serpent on the pole and what he is about to do. So Nicodemus, we referenced part of this story a few weeks ago. Nicodemus is this brilliant, educated teacher of the law. He's just perplexed by Jesus and what Jesus is doing, and he wants to know more. He comes to Jesus at night, and they have this one-on-one conversation, and Jesus is going to tie the serpent on the pole with what he's about to do on the cross. John chapter 3, verse 10. You are Israel's teacher, Jesus said, and you do not understand these things. They've been talking about rebirth. They've been talking about how does a human being get a new start. So Moses prayed for the people. He references the snake story, right, that we just read. And the Lord said to Moses, make a snake and put it up on a pole, and anyone who is bitten can look at it and live. Very truly, I tell you, we speak of what we know, and we testify to what we've seen, but still you people do not accept our testimony. I've spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? No one has ever gone into heaven except the one who came from heaven, the Son of Man. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man, Jesus referring to himself, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes may have eternal life in him. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish from the venom, but have eternal life. John 3:16. So why does Jesus reference this Numbers 21 passage as he's trying to help Nicodemus understand what's about to happen through the cross? Part of it would be this, is that Jesus seems to be making a connection or an analogy between venomous snakes and this idea that human beings have been bitten by a toxin that is deadly. It's called sin. It's called sin nature. And it is within every one of us, and it courses through our system, and this fiery venom has the power and capacity to destroy us, and we have no solutions to the venom of sin. Every human being has been bitten by it. And Jesus says, here's what needs to happen. You're gonna have to look at something else. You cannot medicate yourself because you've been bitten by the power of sin. You can't find a way to fix this. You need something beyond yourself. Last year, I was archery hunting with one of my buddies here from the church, and I bet we were 115 miles from the nearest hospital. We were probably 3 or 4 miles from a vehicle and miles from a trail. And I'm in the lead, and we're headed up this ridge and just completely focused on anything other than the ground. And I take a step, and I hear that. And I look down, and this far from me is one of the biggest rattlesnakes I've ever seen coiled up. So I leap backwards, he's behind me, and I think I outweigh him by about 80, 90 pounds. I fell into him, and he catches me, and he sees the snake. I am a composed individual until I see snakes. And I'm like, ha, 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 like jumping around, trying to get back. And the snake eventually goes away. It takes me like 4 minutes of recovery. I'm like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. The rest of the day, where am I looking? I'm just looking down, right? I'm looking down everywhere. Like, I do not want that to happen again. And then later on in the day, we stopped and took a break. And Justin says to me, he goes, man, I don't know what I would have done if that snake would have actually gotten you, because I don't think I could haul you out. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should walk in front, because I think I could carry you out. It was just one of those times. If I had been bitten, what is it? You've got to go get anti-venom as soon as you can. It would have been hours and hours. So Jesus is saying this snake, and he's tying into the Genesis 3 passage with the serpent, and the serpent, through this dialogue with Adam and Eve, has injected rebellion, right? And like Eve said, bite me, and Adam said, bite me. Yeah, I'll take that. And now that's coursing through the human condition. And Jesus says, just like when you were bitten in the desert, here's what God asked you to do. He said, don't look at the pain. Don't look at the thing that's inflicted the pain. I want you to look at this bronze snake held up on a pole like a cross. He says, when I'm lifted up from the earth, people are gonna find a way to have life. When you look, when you believe in what the cross is actually all about, you won't perish, but you'll have a new eternal life. A life that's actually worth living, and it's about the exaltation of Jesus. So this passage has been really important to this church. Part of this is just the simple exaltation of Jesus, meaning this, I pray this every week. I pray when you leave, when you turn off your screen, I pray that no one was exalted other than Jesus. I don't pray that you leave going, wow, Chris has such a good voice, or like Nate finally made sense this weekend, we're so proud of him. I don't want you to remember the worship. I don't want you to remember me. We want to exalt Jesus because we believe that Jesus is incredibly attractive to human beings, right? I have dialogues all the time with people who are uncertain of what they believe. And I don't find people who are like, nah, I'm down on Jesus. You can't help but admire him. Even if you don't believe, even if you haven't looked to him as your savior. So we're trying to exalt Jesus because what does he do? He draws people. I'll draw all men unto me. That means I don't have to manipulate. You don't have to manipulate. You just exalt Jesus and people are drawn to him. But Jesus takes it beyond that simple form of, hey, exalt me. And he says this, the cross is going to be like that bronze snake. And when people look to it and believe, their lives are going to change. So even Carl Jung, the great psychologist, very influential, he says this about the cross. He says, you cannot write a more tragic story. Let's talk for a moment about the cross and why lifting up someone's execution could bring healing and hope to their lives. So the cross is in part about pain. Pain. There's physical pain. As I said, to this day, there's never been developed a more heinous, excruciating, long-lasting form of execution. There are accounts of people living on a cross, dying in utter agony for up to 3 days. It was just horrible. It was meant to slow down death. And on top of that, Jesus is whipped, he's beaten, he's got a crown of thorns. I mean, just everything about it is excruciating pain. So part of the venom of sin is there's a bunch of us are saying, man, I'm dealing with chronic pain, and I'm dealing with sickness, and my body just doesn't operate. And the cross is all about, Jesus understands that. This God embraced the pain of the human condition, the physical pain of being human. But it's not just physical pain. The cross is this tragic story about emotional pain, utter emotional pain. I love my mom. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I would do anything to avoid would be for my mom to have to watch me die. Jesus is hanging on the cross and his mother is there and she's utterly hopeless. His friends are there and they are helpless. There's nothing they can do. There's this sense of profound rejection. There's all this emotional angst, and it even gets worse. One of the last things that Jesus says from the cross as he's hanging there, he's taking all human pain and sin upon himself, is he cries out. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? There is this emotional distance that is happening within the Trinity, where even Jesus, the Son of God, as he takes on all of the human condition, he says, now I even feel separated from my Father. There's so much emotional pain. So physical pain, emotional pain, and there's this betrayal. Betrayal is one of the hardest things for human beings to get through. Like, we're just constantly dealing with how do you forgive when you've been betrayed in business and marriage and friendship, whatever it might be. Jesus has just been betrayed by two of the guys that he invested his life in. One named Judas, who just sold him out for 30 pieces of silver, which was nothing. And then he's betrayed by the guy that he's put his hopes in to help lead this new movement, a guy named Peter. Who on 3 occasions within a matter of hours, Peter denies even knowing Jesus. So your primary hope, your primary leader, he said, no, I don't even know that guy. I don't even know him. There's this incredible sense of betrayal that Jesus is experiencing as he looks down at Peter. There's rejection. The crowd had chanted, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And there's enough people in the crowd and there's enough passion that Pontius Pilate breaks his own laws and says, okay, if that's what you want, if you have rejected this person, we'll crucify him. Humiliation, profound humiliation. The crowd is given a choice. It's the Passover. There's this custom of releasing a prisoner. And here are your two choices. This man named Jesus, who taught and healed and loved people that no one else loved. Or a known murderer and insurrectionist by the name of Barabbas. And Pilate says, here's your two options. And the crowd chooses Barabbas. It's humiliating. It's humiliating to be the one person who isn't guilty and be hanging, exposed upon a cross. You've been mocked and jeered, stripped and exposed. And then there's this tragic element to the story that it's failure. It's failure. It's as if Jesus, like everything that everybody hoped, the story's over. Jesus, as he's hanging on the cross, can look in the eyes of everyone who had abandoned their businesses and their homes, everything they knew, to say, we really think that you're here to change the world. And now he's dying in front of them on a cross. It's this sense of failure that the Roman Empire really is too powerful, that the Jewish religious establishment is too powerful. The two things came together, and now you'd say that Jesus is an ultimate failure hanging on a cross. It is an absolutely tragic story. Now, this isn't the week where we'll talk about the end of the story, right? It's followed by resurrection. But the cross in and of itself is horrific. So when Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, who he wants new life, Jesus says, here's what needs to happen. Just like that venom from a snake, human beings have this venom of sin. And the only way that you find healing is you're going to need to look to the cross, which represents all the failure, all the pain, all the emptiness, all the heartbreak, all the betrayal. There is a God who came down and said, the worst that humanity can experience, I'll experience it. I'll pay for it. And now, the way to life, Nicodemus, isn't through looking to yourself and finding, how do I deal with the venom of sin in my life? And maybe if I study harder, or maybe if I work harder, I'm more devout or diligent, maybe I can deal with the venom in my life. Jesus says this, oh no. Here's how you deal with the venom. You look to the very thing that is killing you. That Jesus embraces upon the cross. And when you look to that, that's how you find eternal life. That is the only anti-venom that exists, is you look to the cross. When I look at the cross, is it a decoration or a declaration? Is the cross something I look to, or do I look to the crisis? We don't look to the crisis. We look to the cross.